Have you ever wondered what it takes to truly make it to the top? To achieve unimaginable wealth, success, and power? What if I told you that the price of getting everything you've ever wanted might be far more than you could ever imagine, your soul, your body, and your very identity? In today's story, you're about to hear the chilling confession of a woman who achieved the pinnacle of success, only to realize that the world she had entered came with a dark and terrifying cost. This is a story about the dangerous path of occultism, the lies of false prophets, and the spiritual forces that controlled her every move. Her journey was one of fame and fortune, but behind the scenes, it was a descent into a world of darkness and addiction, a world where the price of success was her very soul. This is Dangerous African Confession HD. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the full journey.
I must first say that I never imagined I would be telling a story like this to anyone. There's a part of me that wishes I could turn back time, that I could undo everything, erase the choices I made, the steps I took, but I can't. But you see, all I can do now is share what I've lived through, in the hope that maybe someone will hear me and avoid the same path. I was once a dreamer, like so many others. I had a vision for my life, a picture of who I wanted to be. But dreams don't always come true, as we all know. Especially when you're working within the boundaries of what is possible. I started my career in the business world, working long hours, facing rejection, and constantly wondering if I was good enough. I watched others rise, others who seemed to have it all, the connections, the power, the money. I watched them from the sidelines, and I knew that I, too, had the potential. But it didn't seem like it was ever going to happen for me. I remember those nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself if I'm missing anything in life to help me reach the top too. I was willing to sacrifice everything for success, but success, it seemed, wasn't in the cards for me. My brother, the truth is that I had no idea how much my desperation for a breakthrough would shape the choices I would make. For years, I toiled away in jobs that were supposed to lead somewhere, but they didn't. I was stuck. And the more I worked, the more I realized that all the effort, all the talent, all the years I put in, none of it mattered if you didn't have the right connections, the right influence. It was around this time that I first heard about the man who was a prophet. He was famous in certain circles. A man who I was told sees beyond the physical world, someone who was full of spiritual guidance that could transform lives. People talked about him, about his powers, his ability to change destinies, to make the impossible happen. He had a following, and they all spoke of him in reverent tones. You see, this person talking to you now, in my initial stages of life, I didn't believe in these things, spirits, rituals, the supernatural. I was a businesswoman. I believed in hard work and strategy. But I was desperate, and the idea of a shortcut, a way to finally reach the success I had dreamed of, was tempting. So, one day, I went to see him. Honestly, the first time I laid eyes on him, I felt a strange sense of calm. He was older, with a serene expression, as though he knew something I didn't. He spoke of the universe, of spiritual laws, and of the energies that flowed through everything. He promised that through his guidance, I could unlock the doors of success that had been closed to me for so long. He told me that my desire for wealth and power was not just ambition, it was a calling. He said that the universe had something special planned for me, but in order to access it, I needed to tap into hidden forces, forces that could only be accessed through ritual. He spoke of divine power, but also of a deeper, more ancient energy, one that wasn't bound by earthly laws. I was skeptical, yes. But as he spoke, I felt something stir within me, something I hadn't felt before, an awakening. He told me that the ritual would be simple at first, that it would guide me into the right mindset to accept the opportunities the universe had for me. He said I had to trust him, that I had to trust the process. And, against my better judgment, I did. I was willing to do whatever it took. My brother, the first ritual was almost peaceful. It wasn't what I expected. There were no chants, no dark symbols, no foreboding atmosphere. It was just a room, dimly lit, with incense smoke swirling around. He guided me through breathing exercises, and I felt a sense of calm and clarity I hadn't felt in years. The first night after the ritual, I went to work the next day, and everything seemed to click into place. Ideas flowed, opportunities appeared, and doors opened that had previously been locked. You see, people noticed me. I began to rise in the company. I was promoted again and again, faster than anyone else. It felt like magic. It felt like I had found the key to everything I had ever wanted. But soon, the rituals began to change. They became more intense, more demanding. He told me that the universe's gifts didn't come for free. There was a price to pay. Do you have any idea of the price? If I tell you he meant my body, will you believe it? The price was my body. My soul. He told me that the spirit I had awakened would demand certain services in exchange for continued blessings. At first, I was confused. But he explained it in a way that made sense to me. These spirits, these powers, thrived on energy, on connection. I had to give of myself in ways I had never imagined. I had to be laying with men in order to be able to initiate this energy-giving process that will facilitate my continuous wealth. And as hard as it was, I did. I did whatever was asked of me. Because I thought that was the only way. But what he didn't tell me, what he couldn't tell me, was that with every ritual, with every sacrifice, I was falling deeper into a web I couldn't escape from. It started slowly. At first, it was just a feeling, an overwhelming urge to be with a man. A strange pull, a desire that came out of nowhere. It wasn't about love or attraction, it was a demand, a spiritual need. I didn't understand it at first, but it grew stronger with each passing day. The spirit required it. They told me it was necessary for the energy exchange, that it would bring me more success. The more I gave, the more I received. But you see, it wasn't just about the physical act. It was about the power I felt afterwards, the sense that I was on top of the world, untouchable. It was intoxicating. But with each encounter, I lost a little more of myself. And when the ritual ended, I would feel empty again, hollow, as though I had given away something sacred. But the saddest part of this whole thing I'm telling you is that it never stopped. The cycle continued. I couldn't stop. At first, it seemed like a fair exchange. The more I gave, the more I received. Success came easily, so easily, in fact, that I began to believe I was invincible. Every deal I touched turned to gold. I became known, respected. The promotion that once seemed so far out of reach became my reality. I owned everything I had ever dreamed of. The life I had always envied, the life I had desperately wanted, was mine. But as time passed, I began to feel something shift. It was subtle at first, just a feeling that wouldn't leave me. A gnawing emptiness. The spirit's demands grew, and they weren't content anymore with simple rituals or offerings. They wanted more. They wanted control. I thought I could handle it. I believed that I could manage the pull, keep it at bay while I enjoyed the fruit of my labor. But it wasn't that simple. The more I succeeded, the more the spirits demanded, more rituals, more sacrifices, more offerings of myself. And the offerings, they weren't always in the form of things I could give away easily. They were me, my soul, my body. And even sometimes, it got to a time I was doing it with my fellow women. I remember the first time it happened. The feeling of urgency was overwhelming. It was as though something inside me had been awakened, a primal, insatiable hunger that demanded to be fed. The spirits whispered to me, their voices insistent, telling me that I needed to fulfill their desires in order to maintain the flow of power I had come to rely on. It wasn't about intimacy. It wasn't about pleasure. It was something darker. a ritual, a transaction. At first, I fought it. I tried to reason with myself, this isn't who I am. I don't need this. But the pull was undeniable. It was stronger than my willpower. Every time I ignored the call, something in my life would fall apart, an important deal would go south, a promotion would slip away, or a client would suddenly vanish. My brother, the spirits weren't playing games. They had made their demands clear. If I wanted to keep everything I had gained, I had to obey. The hunger inside me grew, and so with it, the feeling of being out of control. I was no longer making decisions on my own. They were making them for me. Honestly, this thing I cannot count. I lost count of how many times I gave in to the demands, how many times I let the darkness consume me, hoping that it would be enough to keep the power flowing, to keep the success coming. But with every act, I lost more of myself. Each time, I felt the pieces of me slipping further away. My thoughts were no longer my own. My body wasn't mine anymore. It wasn't just my career that was affected. Slowly, everything else in my life began to fall apart. I stopped seeing friends. I stopped going out. I couldn't connect with anyone anymore. The people around me began to notice my absence, but they didn't understand what was happening to me. They couldn't see the battle I was fighting, one that was spiritual, emotional, and physical. I was losing myself, piece by piece, and there was no one I could talk to about it. The more I gained, the more alone I became. My relationships became hollow. I couldn't share my success with anyone. I didn't even want to. The desire for power, for wealth, had eclipsed everything. The spirit's whispers in my ear told me that I was alone in this. They made me believe that no one else could understand the path I had chosen. That I couldn't trust anyone. You see, I began to fear the nights, the moments when I was alone with myself, when the demands would rise up again, unbidden. I would feel the pull like a weight on my chest, the pressure mounting until I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just about fulfilling the spirit's desires anymore. It was about survival. The spirit's voices would haunt me, their hunger insatiable, their demands endless. And if I didn't comply, I feared that I would lose it all, the wealth, the power, my very life. Honestly, I have been through a lot. I don't know if you can picture what I am saying, like how it's supposed to be seen. The more I gave, the more the spirits wanted. They were never satisfied. They made their demands clear with every passing day, and if I failed to comply, the consequences were severe. My world, once full of color and promise, became suffocating, a prison built by my own hands. I could feel them now, following me everywhere I went. The shadows seemed to grow longer, the air heavier, and every time I tried to escape, I could sense them closing in, pulling me back. I could hear their voices, soft at first, then louder and more urgent. I knew what they wanted, and they knew I couldn't say no. I remember one night, after one of the rituals, I was going home through the city, and I felt their presence more strongly than I ever had before. They were calling to me, telling me I had to fulfill their desires or face their wrath. I tried to resist, tried to ignore the pull, but it was too strong. It wasn't just a craving anymore, it was a need. My body burned with the desire to give in. I felt like I had no choice but to obey. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. I was just a vessel, a tool being used by these spirits to fulfill their hunger. And I was addicted to it. So, most addictions, I can say that they do have a spiritual backing to them. My brother, the power, the success, it wasn't enough to fill the void. I was spiraling, unable to stop, even though I could feel the weight of the cause becoming unbearable. And I feared of what would happen to my body. The nights became worse. The demands grew more intense, the hunger more insatiable. And with every act, I felt myself losing a part of my humanity. I knew, deep down, that I was being consumed, not just by the spirits, but by my own choices. My soul was being torn apart, piece by piece. But I didn't know how to stop. I thought I could handle it, that I could balance the power with my own will. But I couldn't. And I knew, in the deepest corners of my heart, that this was no longer a blessing, it was a curse. The success, the wealth, the recognition, they all came at a price. A price I was no longer willing to pay. It was a quiet afternoon when I was relaxing that I first realized the true extent of my descent. I had been riding high on success for months, perhaps even years, but the emptiness within me had grown too loud to ignore. The rituals were becoming more frequent, more intense, and the spirit's demands were like a constant hum, always at the back of my mind. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't sleep without feeling their presence pressing on my chest, suffocating me with their hunger. I was driving down the street one day, one of the few times I had ventured outside for something other than business. My mind was a mess, overwhelmed with the pressure to maintain my power, my success. The weight of it was crushing. And then, out of nowhere, a voice interrupted my thoughts. A voice I didn't recognize, yet it felt strangely familiar. I heard it like my mother's. It told me that I can't keep living like this. It's not too late to stop. I froze in my tracks. I had heard the voice before, soft, gentle, yet full of authority. It was a voice that spoke of truth, of something higher than the spirits I had come to obey. I looked around, half expecting to see someone nearby, but the street was empty. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had been so used to the voices of the spirits, their demands, that this voice, felt like a lifeline. But it wasn't just a voice, it was something more. A presence. The voice came again. And this time, it said that it doesn't have to be this way. And that I can break free. I have the power to choose. My brother, for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope. Hope that I had forgotten existed. I remember the days when I had wanted to be a businesswoman not just for the wealth and power, but because I believed in something greater, something meaningful. I had long since abandoned those ideals, but now, there in the middle of the street, they came rushing back. I hadn't realized how far I had fallen until that moment. I had been so consumed by the idea of success that I lost sight of everything that mattered. I had sacrificed parts of myself that could never be reclaimed, and now, I was left hollow, a puppet of the spirit's whims. I had thought I was in control. I had convinced myself that I was choosing this path, but in truth, it had been leading me towards something far darker. I remembered the first time I'd met the prophet, the promises of wealth, power, and success. He had made it all sound so innocent, so easy. But now, it was clear to me that everything had been a lie. The success I had once craved felt like a prison. Each promotion, each new opportunity was only a chain that bound me deeper into the darkness. He had called it divine power, but now, I knew the truth. What I had been following was not divine at all. It was demonic. It was a system of manipulation, of using my own desires against me. I had been led into this world by a man who disguised himself as a spiritual guide, but all along, he had been a servant of dark forces, using me as a tool to fulfill their hunger. And in return for my obedience, for my willingness to sacrifice my body and soul, I had gained nothing but emptiness. Success was no longer sweet. It was hollow, a facade. I had everything I could have dreamed of, and yet, I was miserable. I felt as if I was losing my humanity with every passing day, slowly becoming a shell of who I once was. The simple truth is that I wanted to be free. I wanted to reclaim what I had lost. But the road ahead wasn't simple. The grip of the spirits was tight, their influence so deeply woven into my life that I didn't know how to break free. They had woven their web so intricately that it felt like every part of me was entangled. My success, my career, my identity, they were all tied to their demands, and I knew that walking away would cost me everything. But the alternative was far worse. I couldn't keep living in this prison, under the control of forces that cared nothing for me, only for the power I could give them. I had to find a way out. And so, I made the hardest decision of my life. I decided to fight back. It wasn't easy, not by any means. I had no idea where to begin, or who to turn to. I couldn't trust the people around me, the ones who had been complicit in my success. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know what I had sacrificed to get where I was. But there was one person I could turn to, someone I had once known before I had fallen into this darkness. An old woman who I knew believed in the power of herbs. But one thing about her is that she always talks about God. She had always spoken of the true power of God, the light that could break any darkness. And so, I reached out to her, desperate for guidance, unsure if she would even remember me, let alone help me. When she answered the phone, her voice was filled with compassion, but also with a quiet strength. Through her advice and guidance, I am no longer a slave to the spirits. The only difference now is that I don't have what I used to have, but I want it His way. I cannot continue to give myself to men and women at the same time and lose myself.
What you've just heard is a story of a woman who paid the ultimate price for success, and while her journey may seem extreme, it's a stark reminder that the choices we make in pursuit of power and wealth can lead us down dark paths. No matter where you are in life, never forget the importance of balance, integrity, and staying true to who you are. If you've learned something valuable from this story, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share the lessons, the warnings, and the hope of redemption. We all need to remember that no success is worth losing yourself over. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our powerful stories and life-changing advice. Drop a comment below what part of this story impacted you the most. And don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of making wise choices in life. Until next time, remember, your soul, your peace, and your integrity are worth more than anything this world can offer. Stay true to yourself, and you'll never lose your way.